Right now, if you had to sit in a room for 10 minutes with absolutely nothing to do, no phone, no music, no one to talk to, you probably start to feel it almost immediately. That itch, that restless, uncomfortable pull to check something, anything, just to escape the silence. We call that feeling boredom, and most of us treat it like an enemy to be defeated as quickly as possible. But here's a strange question almost nobody asks. Did your ancestors, the ones who spent entire days hunting, gathering, and sitting around fires with nothing resembling entertainment, ever feel this way? The answer might completely change how you think about your own attention span. And it starts with something surprising. Boredom might not even be an ancient feeling at all. To understand this, we first need to understand what boredom actually is, psychologically. Boredom isn't simply the absence of activity. Researchers define it as the uncomfortable state your brain enters when it wants stimulation but can't find any, or when the stimulation available doesn't feel meaningful enough to hold your attention. It's not rest, it's a kind of internal friction, your mind actively straining against a lack of input. And that distinction matters enormously, because it means boredom isn't just about having nothing to do, it's about your brain expecting more than what's currently available. Now think about early human life. A hunter-gatherer's day wasn't filled with constant novelty, but it also wasn't empty. Every walk through the landscape required tracking animal signs, reading weather patterns, remembering which plants were edible and which were poisonous, and staying alert for predators. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies, groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or the Juhwanzi in the Kalahari, have found that daily life involves near constant low-level environmental engagement. Your senses are always working. Your mind is always slightly occupied with tracking, predicting, and the problem solving, even during tasks that look repetitive from the outside, like walking or foraging. There's rarely a moment where the brain has nothing at all to process, because survival itself was the stimulation. This is fundamentally different from modern boredom, which usually strikes during moments of enforced stillness with nothing meaningful to engage with. Sitting in a waiting room, standing in a slow-moving line, lying in bed unable to sleep. Ancient humans rarely experienced this specific kind of stillness because their environment was constantly feeding their minds small amounts of relevant information. Even sitting quietly by a fire wasn't empty time. It was, as we've covered before, filled with storytelling, social bonding, tool repair, or quiet observation of the surroundings. There is almost always something for the mind to hold on to. But there's an even deeper reason ancient humans likely didn't experience boredom the way we do, and it has to do with expectation. Modern boredom is partly created by contrast. If you're used to constant, rapid stimulation, videos, notifications, quick entertainment on demand, then a quiet moment feels unbearably empty by comparison. Your brain has been trained to expect a certain rate of novelty, and when that rate drops, the gap feels like discomfort. Ancient humans had no such contrast to measure against. There was no faster, more stimulating alternative sitting in their pocket. The pace of the natural world simply was the baseline, so there was no gap to feel uncomfortable about. You can't feel deprived of something you have no concept of. Researchers studying attention and dopamine have found supporting evidence for this idea in modern experiments. Studies show that heavy use of high stimulation media, especially short-form video content, appears to lower people's tolerance for low stimulation environments over time. People who consume large amounts of fast paced content report higher boredom levels during ordinary daily tasks compared to those who don't. In other words, boredom isn't a fixed ancient trait sitting inside all of us. It behaves more like a dial that gets turned up the more our environment trains us to expect constant novelty. Ancient humans lived with that dial permanently set low, not because they were more disciplined, but because nothing around them ever turned it up in the first place. This idea reframes something important about how we understand our ancestors. We often imagine early human life as slow and understimulating compared to ours, and by modern standards, it certainly was less varied. But understimulating isn't the same as boring, at least not psychologically. A day spent tracking animals, reading the landscape, and staying alert to danger was cognitively demanding in ways that modern convenience has quietly erased. Boredom, in a sense, may be a byproduct of solving too many of our environmental problems. Once you're no longer required to constantly scan, predict, and adapt just to survive, your brain still expects that level of engagement. And when it doesn't get it, boredom is the alarm bell that goes off. There's also a social dimension worth considering. Ancient humans rarely spent long stretches of time completely alone. Group living meant nearly constant low-level social interaction, conversation, cooperation, shared tasks. Even quiet moments were often shared moments. Modern boredom frequently strikes hardest during isolation, when we're physically alone with a mind that has nothing external to latch onto. Our ancestors simply had far fewer of those isolated, unstructured gaps in their day. So the next time you feel that restless itch to check your phone during a quiet moment, it's worth asking whether that discomfort is really about having nothing to do, or whether it's a sign of how finely tuned your brain has become to expect constant novelty. Your ancestors weren't bored while gathering food, tracking animals, or sitting by a fire, not because they were somehow tougher or more patient than you, but because their world never taught their minds to expect anything faster. We built a world of infinite stimulation, and in doing so, we may have accidentally invented boredom itself, not as an ancient flaw in human psychology, but as the price of everything we gained.